Let me tell you something that might surprise you. Happiness isn't about feeling good all the time. It's about knowing how to find your way back to peace no matter what's happening around you. Most people think happiness is a destination. They believe once they get the job, the relationship, the money, the recognition, then they'll finally be happy. But that's not how it works. You've probably noticed that yourself. You achieve something you wanted, feel good for a moment, then quickly start looking for the next thing. Real happiness, the kind that lasts, isn't about circumstances. It's about how you relate to your life. It's about the perspective you choose, the habits you build, and the way you respond to both good and bad moments. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is perfect. It's about developing the inner strength to remain grounded, grateful, and genuinely content even when life gets hard. What follows are 10 principles that will transform how you experience each day. These aren't theories. They're practices used by real people who found genuine happiness despite facing challenges just like yours. Each chapter includes a true story from everyday life that proves these principles work in the real world, not just in books. If you're tired of happiness slipping away every time something goes wrong, if you're exhausted from chasing feelings that never last, if you're ready to build something more solid, this is for you. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Happiness begins the moment you stop telling yourself you'll be happy when something changes. Most people have a long list of conditions they believe must be met before they can truly feel content. I'll be happy when I get promoted. I'll be happy when I lose weight. I'll be happy when I find the right person. I'll be happy when I have more money. But here's what actually happens. You achieve one of those things, feel a brief surge of satisfaction, then immediately create a new condition. The goalpost moves. The happiness you felt disappears. And you're back to waiting. This pattern can consume your entire life if you let it. True happiness isn't found in perfect conditions. It's found in your ability to appreciate what is, while working toward what could be. It's learning to be content with where you are without being complacent about where you're going. The shift happens when you realize, this moment, right now, is the only one you actually have. Tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Next year might never come. If you can't find something to appreciate today, you won't suddenly know how to appreciate it tomorrow. This doesn't mean you stop having goals or stop wanting to improve your life. It means you stop making your happiness dependent on those things happening. You learn to enjoy the journey, not just the destination. You find joy in the effort, not just the outcome. You appreciate the process of becoming, not just the moment of achieving. Sarah's story. Sarah spent 15 years of her life waiting to be happy. At 25, she told herself she'd be happy when she got promoted to manager. At 28, when she finally got that promotion, the happiness lasted about 2 weeks before she started thinking, I'll be happy when I make 6 figures. When she hit that salary milestone at 32, she moved the goalpost again. I'll be happy when I buy a house. Then it was, I'll be happy when I get married. Then, I'll be happy when I have kids. She got married at 35. Had her first child at 37. Bought the house. Checked all the boxes. And yet, standing in her beautiful kitchen one morning, with her healthy daughter eating breakfast and her loving husband reading the paper, Sarah realized something devastating. She still wasn't happy. She was exhausted, stressed, and constantly worried about the next thing. The wake-up call came during a regular checkup when her doctor noticed her blood pressure was dangerously high. You're 40 years old and your stress levels are off the charts, the doctor said. What's going on? Sarah broke down. She admitted she'd spent her entire adult life chasing happiness in the future, and now the future was here, and she'd missed it. She'd been so focused on the next milestone that she'd never actually enjoyed any of them. That night, she made a decision. She started a simple practice. Every evening, she'd write down 3 things from that specific day that were good. Not things she hoped would happen. Not achievements. Just moments worth noticing. Her daughter's laugh. The way the morning light came through the window. A kind text from a friend. The taste of her coffee. A good song on the radio. At first, it felt forced. Trivial even. But after a few weeks, something shifted. She started noticing these moments during the day, not just when she was trying to remember them. She'd catch herself smiling at small things she would have previously ignored. 6 months later, Sarah's blood pressure had normalized. Her doctor asked what had changed. She said, "I stopped waiting for my life to start. I realized it's been happening all along, and I was too busy planning to notice." Sarah still has goals. She still works toward things. But she's learned to be happy now, with what is, while building what could be. She stopped making her happiness conditional on circumstances that might never feel like enough. The irony? Now that she's stopped chasing happiness so desperately, she actually feels it more consistently than ever before. Chapter 2. Practice gratitude like your life depends on it. If you want to transform your emotional state immediately, start focusing on what you have instead of what you lack. Gratitude isn't just a nice idea. It's one of the most powerful psychological tools for creating lasting happiness. When you genuinely focus on what you're grateful for, your brain literally changes. It shifts from a state of scarcity to abundance, from anxiety to peace, from discontent to satisfaction. Most people spend their mental energy dwelling on what's wrong, what's missing, what they wish was different. They think about bills, problems, disappointments. And the more they focus there, the worse they feel. But when you deliberately redirect your attention to what's working, what you do have, what's beautiful in your life right now, your entire experience shifts. This isn't about ignoring real problems or pretending difficulties don't exist. It's about balancing your perspective. It's about training your mind to see the whole picture, not just the negative parts. The practice is simple. Every day, identify specific things you're grateful for. Not vague concepts, but concrete realities. The warm water in your shower. The fact that you can see. Someone who loves you. The ability to walk. A meal. A conversation. A moment of peace. When you do this consistently, something remarkable happens. You start noticing more things to be grateful for. Your brain gets better at spotting the good. You become more present. More appreciative. More content with what is. Gratitude doesn't eliminate challenges, but it changes how heavy they feel. It reminds you that even in difficulty, there are still blessings. Even in pain, there are still reasons to keep going. Marcus's story. Marcus lost his job on a Tuesday. 22 years with the same company, and they let him go in a 15-minute meeting. Budget cuts, they said. Nothing personal. He was 53 years old. He had a mortgage. 2 kids in college. A wife who'd just been diagnosed with diabetes. And now no job. For the first month, Marcus spiraled. He sent out resumes and got nothing back. He watched his savings shrink. He couldn't sleep. Every morning felt like waking up to the same nightmare. His wife, Linda, watched him deteriorate. One evening, she sat him down and said something that shocked him. "I know this is hard. But you're so focused on what we lost that you can't see what we still have." Marcus snapped at her. "What do we have, Linda? Tell me. Because from where I'm sitting, we're losing everything." She didn't get defensive. She just started listing things. "You have your health. Both our kids are alive and doing well in school. We have a roof over our heads. We have each other. You have skills and experience. We have friends who care about us. We can still pay our bills this month. You can still walk, think, and problem solve." Marcus wanted to dismiss it as naive optimism. But something in her words cracked through his despair. That night, unable to sleep again, he grabbed a notebook. He started writing down everything he still had. It felt stupid at first, but he kept going. He wrote, "I can see. I can hear. I have working legs. I have hot water. I have a bed. My kids are healthy. Linda still loves me even though I've been miserable to live with. I have friends who've offered to help. I have skills that companies need." The list grew to 2 pages. The next morning, something was different. The fear was still there, but it wasn't crushing him anymore. He realized he'd been so focused on the one thing he lost that he'd forgotten the 100 things he still had. He made a commitment. Every morning, before job searching, he'd write down 5 things he was grateful for. Specific things. Real things. Some days it was hard. I'm grateful the car still runs. I'm grateful for coffee. I'm grateful my body works. But the practice changed him. He started interviewing with less desperation and more confidence. He stopped seeing himself as someone who'd lost everything and started seeing himself as someone with valuable experience and skills. 3 months later, Marcus got a job offer. It wasn't at his old salary, but it was enough. More importantly, he'd learned something that no job could give him. His well-being didn't depend on his circumstances. It depended on his perspective. A year later, Marcus still keeps his gratitude journal. Even though things are stable now, he doesn't want to forget what he learned. Losing my job was one of the worst things that happened to me, he says. But it taught me to stop taking everything for granted. I'm actually happier now than I was when everything was perfect. Gratitude didn't fix Marcus's problems, but it changed how he carried them. And that made all the difference. Chapter 3. Let go of what you can't control. One of the fastest ways to destroy your peace is to stress over things you have no power to change. You can't control what other people think about you. You can't control how situations unfold. You can't control the past. You can't control most of what happens in the world around you. But you can control how you respond. You can control where you place your focus. You can control your effort, your attitude, your choices. When you spend energy trying to control the uncontrollable, you create unnecessary suffering. You exhaust yourself fighting battles you can never win. You tie your happiness to outcomes you have no authority over. The path to peace is simple. Identify what you can influence, focus your energy there, and release everything else. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop carrying burdens that aren't yours to carry. It means you stop wasting energy on things that won't change no matter how much you worry. Ask yourself regularly, is this within my control? If yes, take action. If no, let it go. Someone doesn't like you? You can't control that. Let it go. The weather ruins your plans? You can't control that. Adjust and move forward. Someone hurt you in the past? You can't change that. But you can control whether you keep reliving it. Freedom comes when you stop trying to control everything and start managing what's actually within your power, your thoughts, your responses, your daily choices. Jennifer's story. Jennifer's daughter, Amy, was 16 when she started making choices that terrified Jennifer. Amy was skipping school, hanging out with kids Jennifer didn't trust, staying out late, and becoming increasingly distant and angry. Jennifer tried everything. She grounded Amy. She took away her phone. She scheduled family counseling that Amy refused to attend. She called the parents of Amy's friends. She drove by places she thought Amy might be. She stayed up all night worrying. Nothing worked. In fact, the more Jennifer tried to control the situation, the worse it got. Amy became more rebellious. Their relationship deteriorated. Jennifer's health suffered. She developed insomnia, anxiety, and was on the verge of losing her own job because she couldn't focus. One night, after another screaming match with Amy, Jennifer sat alone in her kitchen and had a breakdown. She called her sister, sobbing. Her sister said something that changed everything. "Jen, you can't control her. You never could. You can only control yourself." Jennifer's first reaction was anger. "So I'm supposed to just give up on my daughter?" "No," her sister said gently. "You love her. You set boundaries. You offer support. But you stop destroying yourself trying to force her to make better choices. She's going to make her own decisions. You can't live her life for her." That conversation forced Jennifer to face a painful truth. Amy was going to do what Amy was going to do. Jennifer could drive herself into the ground trying to control it, or she could accept what was within her power and release what wasn't. She started asking herself every time she felt the panic rising, "Can I control this? Can I control whether Amy goes to school today? No. Can I control whether she makes good choices? No. Can I control how I respond to her? Yes. Can I control whether I maintain my own health and sanity? Yes. Jennifer made hard decisions. She told Amy she loved her unconditionally, but there would be consequences for certain behaviors. She stopped trying to track Amy's every move. She stopped lecturing constantly. She focused on being present and calm when Amy was home, rather than angry and controlling. It was terrifying. It felt like giving up. But Jennifer realized that her previous approach wasn't working anyway. It was just making her sick. Something unexpected happened. When Jennifer stopped trying to control everything, the dynamic shifted. Amy didn't immediately transform, but the constant conflict eased. There was space for actual conversation instead of just fighting. More importantly, Jennifer started sleeping again. Her anxiety decreased. She could function at work. She rediscovered parts of herself that had disappeared into the panic of trying to control her daughter. A year later, Amy started making better choices. Not because Jennifer forced her, but because Amy matured and faced the natural consequences of her decisions. The relationship between them slowly rebuilt. Jennifer looks back and realizes, I couldn't control her choices, but my desperate attempts to control them were destroying both of us. The moment I focused only on what I could actually control, my reactions, my boundaries, my own well-being, everything changed. Not because the situation got easier, but because I stopped making myself miserable over things I couldn't change. That's the power of letting go. It doesn't fix everything, but it frees you to focus your energy where it can actually make a difference. Chapter 4. Serve something bigger than yourself. Happiness that comes from serving only yourself is shallow and temporary. Happiness that comes from contributing to others is deep and lasting. One of the most consistent findings in happiness research is this: people who regularly help others, who contribute to something beyond themselves, report higher levels of life satisfaction than those focused solely on personal gain. This isn't because personal success doesn't matter. It's because humans are wired for connection and contribution. We feel most fulfilled when we know we're making a difference, when we're part of something meaningful, when we're needed. When you serve others, whether through your work, your relationships, or volunteer efforts, you step outside the narrow prison of self-focus. You stop obsessing over your problems and start engaging with the world in a way that creates value. This shifts your entire psychology. Your problems feel smaller. Your sense of purpose grows. You experience the satisfaction that comes from knowing your life matters beyond your own comfort. Serving others doesn't mean neglecting yourself. It means recognizing that your greatest fulfillment comes not from what you get, but from what you give. David's story. David retired at 62 after a successful career in accounting. He'd saved well, paid off his house, and finally had the freedom to do whatever he wanted. For the first 6 months, it was great. He slept in. He played golf. He traveled. He read books. He did all the things he dreamed about during those years of early mornings and long work days. By month 7, something felt off. He couldn't quite name it, but he felt restless. Empty even. By month 10, David was depressed. He'd wake up with nothing to do and no one who needed him. His wife still worked part-time and had her own life. His kids were grown and busy. His days felt pointless. He started drinking more, watching too much TV, gaining weight. His wife noticed and suggested he see someone. The therapist asked him a simple question. What are you contributing? David was confused. I worked for 40 years. I contributed plenty. I'm retired now. I'm supposed to relax. Okay, the therapist said. How's that working for you? David admitted it wasn't. The therapist suggested he might be experiencing a crisis of purpose. Humans need to feel useful. We need to contribute. Without that, life feels meaningless, no matter how comfortable it is. David initially resisted. But the emptiness was becoming unbearable, so he started looking for ways to be useful. He saw a flyer at the library. Volunteers needed to teach adults basic computer skills. David had used computers his whole career. He signed up. The first class was awkward. He taught 3 people in their 60s and 70s how to use email and search the internet. It felt small, almost trivial. But when one woman successfully sent her first email to her daughter overseas and started crying with joy, something shifted in David. He'd helped make that happen. He kept volunteering. 1 class per week turned into 2, then 3. He started helping seniors navigate online banking, video calls with grandchildren, job applications. The people he helped were genuinely grateful. They needed him. His skills mattered. His time mattered. He mattered. Within 3 months, David's depression lifted. He woke up with purpose. He had places to be and people counting on him. His marriage improved because he was happier. He lost the weight because he had energy again. A year into volunteering, David reflected, "I spent 40 years working to make money so I could retire and be happy. But I was more miserable in retirement than I ever was working." It turns out happiness wasn't in having nothing to do. It was in doing something that mattered. Not for money, but for contribution. David's story illustrates a fundamental truth. We're not built to just consume and relax. We're built to create, contribute, and serve. When you use your time, skills, and energy to help others, even in small ways, you tap into a source of fulfillment that self-focus can never provide. Find something bigger than yourself to serve. It doesn't have to be grand. Volunteer. Mentor someone. Help a neighbor. Contribute your skills to a cause. Because the deepest happiness doesn't come from what you get, it comes from what you give. Chapter 5. Build deep relationships over shallow connections. Humans are social creatures. Your happiness is directly connected to the quality of your relationships. One of the longest studies on happiness, the Harvard Study of Adult Development, which has tracked people for over 80 years, found something striking. The quality of your relationships is the strongest predictor of happiness and health throughout your life. Stronger than wealth, stronger than fame, stronger than social class. But here's what matters: quality, not quantity. Having 1,000 shallow connections on social media doesn't create happiness. Having a handful of people who truly know you, who you can be vulnerable with, who support you and challenge you, that creates happiness. Most people today are more connected than ever but lonelier than ever. They have hundreds of online friends but no one to call in a crisis. They're surrounded by people but feel deeply alone. Real connection requires vulnerability. It requires time. It requires showing up not just when it's convenient, but when it's hard. It requires listening, caring, being present. When you invest in deep relationships, with family, close friends, a partner, you create a foundation of support that sustains you through everything life throws at you. Happiness isn't found in isolation. It's found in genuine connection with people who matter. Robert and Tom's story. Robert and Tom met in college and became best friends. After graduation, they stayed close even as life pulled them in different directions. Robert became a lawyer in Chicago. Tom became a teacher in Denver. For years, they called each other weekly. They visited when they could. They showed up for each other's weddings, celebrated each other's kids being born, supported each other through job changes and family struggles. Then life got busy. The weekly calls became monthly, then occasional. Years passed with just a text here and there. They both had work stress, family responsibilities, full lives. The friendship didn't end, it just faded into the background. When Robert turned 50, something happened that changed everything. His wife asked for a divorce. Completely blindsided him. She'd been unhappy for years, she said, and he'd been too focused on work to notice. Robert fell apart. He built his entire life around his career and his marriage. Now the marriage was over, and he realized he'd been so consumed by work that he'd let most of his friendships dissolve. He had colleagues, but no real friends. He had hundreds of LinkedIn connections but no one to call at 2 a.m. when he couldn't stop crying. Desperate, he called Tom. They hadn't really talked in almost 2 years. Tom answered on the second ring. "Robert. How are you, man?" Robert broke down. He told Tom everything, the divorce, the loneliness, how lost he felt. Tom didn't hesitate. "I'm coming to Chicago." This weekend. We need to talk in person. Tom flew out that Friday. They spent the weekend talking, really talking. Not surface conversation, but deep, honest talk about life, pain, regret, fear. Tom didn't try to fix everything. He just listened. He was present. He reminded Robert that he wasn't alone. That weekend saved Robert. Not because it solved his problems, but because it reminded him what real friendship feels like. What genuine connection provides. Robert made a decision. He was going to rebuild the friendships he'd neglected. He reached out to old friends. He made time for relationships instead of treating them as optional extras. He and Tom went back to weekly calls. Not just catching up, but actually sharing what was really happening in their lives, struggles, fears, joys, everything. A year later, Robert's life looked different. The divorce was finalized, but he wasn't falling apart anymore. He'd built a support system of real, deep friendships. When hard days came, he had people to call. When good things happened, he had people who genuinely celebrated with him. He reflected, I spent 20 years building a career and a marriage but letting my friendships fade. I thought I didn't have time. But when everything fell apart, those shallow professional relationships meant nothing. The one friend I'd maintained, even barely, was the one who showed up. That taught me what actually matters. Tom said it simply. Friendship isn't about convenience. It's about commitment. Robert and I committed to each other decades ago. Life got busy, but when he needed me, there was never a question. That's what real friendship is. Their story proves what research confirms. The depth of your relationships matters more than anything else for long-term happiness. Invest in your relationships. Show up. Be vulnerable. Listen deeply. Care genuinely. Forgive quickly. Love thoroughly. Because at the end of your life, what you'll remember isn't your bank account or your achievements. It's the people you loved and who loved you back. That's where real happiness lives. Chapter 6. Accept that pain is part of life. One of the biggest obstacles to happiness is the belief that you shouldn't have to experience pain, discomfort, or difficulty. This belief creates a constant state of resistance. Every time something hard happens, you think, this shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. Why me? That resistance, that refusal to accept that pain is a natural part of life, creates more suffering than the pain itself. The path to lasting happiness isn't avoiding pain. It's accepting that pain will come, and learning to move through it without letting it destroy you. When you stop demanding that life be easy and start accepting that it will be hard sometimes, you stop fighting reality. You stop being surprised by difficulty. You stop feeling victimized every time something goes wrong. This doesn't mean you like pain. It means you understand it's part of the human experience. Everyone experiences loss, disappointment, heartbreak, failure. No one is exempt. The difference between people who remain happy despite hardship and those who spiral into bitterness is simple: acceptance. Happy people don't have easier lives. They have a better relationship with difficulty. They know pain is temporary, that struggle builds strength, that hard seasons eventually pass. Maria's story. Maria's son Carlos was diagnosed with leukemia when he was 8 years old. The doctors said he had a 70% chance of survival with aggressive treatment. Maria's world shattered. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think about anything except, why is this happening to my baby? She spent the first weeks in complete resistance. This isn't fair. This shouldn't be happening. He's just a child. Why us? The anger and resistance consumed her. She was so focused on the injustice of the situation that she wasn't actually present for Carlos. She was there physically, but mentally she was trapped in a loop of, this shouldn't be happening. One night, exhausted after another day at the hospital, Maria broke down in the chapel. She prayed, cried, and finally said out loud, I can't change this. I hate it, but I can't change it. Something shifted in that moment of acceptance. Not acceptance that Carlos would die, acceptance that this was happening, and she could either spend her energy fighting reality, or she could use that energy to be present for her son. She chose presence. Maria stopped asking, "Why us?" and started asking, "What now?" She couldn't control the cancer. She couldn't control the outcome. But she could control how she showed up every single day. She read to Carlos during his treatments. She played his favorite music. She made the hospital room as comforting as possible. She was honest with him about what was happening while staying hopeful. She focused on making every day as good as it could be, given the circumstances. The treatment was brutal. Carlos lost his hair, lost weight, was constantly sick. There were terrifying moments when Maria thought she'd lose him. But through it all, she practiced acceptance. Not that this was good or fair, it wasn't. But that this was real, and resistance wouldn't change it. Carlos went into remission after 18 months of treatment. Today, he's 24 years old and healthy. But Maria says the experience changed her forever, not in a tragic way, but in a profound one. "I learned that life includes pain. It includes things we hate, things that feel unbearable. But resisting reality only makes it worse. When I stopped fighting the fact that this was happening and started accepting it, I could actually be there for Carlos. I could find moments of joy even in the hospital. I could appreciate the good days instead of just mourning what we'd lost." She continues, "People say, I don't know how you stayed so strong. But I wasn't strong. I was just present. I accepted that this was our reality, and I chose to live in it rather than spend all my energy wishing it was different." Maria's story teaches a crucial lesson: acceptance isn't resignation. It's not giving up. It's recognizing reality so you can respond to it effectively. When you accept that pain is part of life, you stop being shocked every time it appears. You stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" You develop resilience. You learn that you can handle hard things. You discover that pain doesn't last forever, but the strength you build through it does. Happiness doesn't mean you never feel pain. It means you know how to feel pain without letting it consume you. It means you can sit with discomfort, process loss, experience disappointment, and still find reasons to keep going. Stop fighting the reality that life includes pain. Accept it. Move through it. Learn from it. And watch how your capacity for happiness expands when you're no longer afraid of temporary difficulty. Chapter 7. Live in the present moment. Most of your unhappiness comes from living anywhere except right now. You replay the past, dwelling on mistakes, regrets, things you can't change. Or you worry about the future, imagining worst-case scenarios, stressing over things that haven't happened and may never happen. Meanwhile, the only moment you actually have, this one, passes by unnoticed. The present moment is where life happens. It's the only place you can experience joy, make choices, take action. When your mind is constantly elsewhere, you miss it. Happiness isn't found in replaying yesterday or rehearsing tomorrow. It's found in being fully here now. This is what mindfulness is about, training yourself to notice when your mind wanders into the past or future, and gently bringing it back to the present. When you're eating, actually taste the food. When you're with someone, actually listen. When you're working, be fully engaged. When you're resting, truly rest. Stop splitting your attention between what is and what was or what might be. Be where you are. The irony is that when you're fully present, you handle the future better. You make clearer decisions. You notice opportunities. You respond more effectively to challenges. But you can't do any of that when half your mind is stuck in regret or anxiety. Elena's story? Elena spent most of her daughter's childhood worried about the future. When Sophie was a baby, Elena worried about daycare, then preschool, then elementary school. When Sophie started school, Elena worried about her grades, her social life, whether she'd get into a good college. Elena was physically present but mentally absent. She'd sit at Sophie's soccer games scrolling through her phone, thinking about work. She'd have dinner with her family while mentally reviewing her to-do list. She'd tuck Sophie in at night while worrying about bills, deadlines, her mother's health. Sophie would try to show her things, a drawing, a story she wrote, a game she invented, and Elena would nod distractedly, only half listening. The wake-up call came when Sophie was 14. Elena found her crying in her room and asked what was wrong. Sophie said, "You're never actually here, Mom. You're always somewhere else in your head. It's like living with a ghost." That devastated Elena. She thought she'd been there, at every game, every school event, every dinner. But Sophie was right. Elena's body was present, but her mind was always elsewhere. Elena knew things had to change, but she didn't know how. She'd spent so many years living in her head that being present felt impossible. A friend suggested she try a meditation app. Elena was skeptical but desperate. She started with just 5 minutes a day, sitting quietly, focusing on her breath, noticing when her mind wandered and gently bringing it back. It was harder than she expected. Her mind raced constantly. But she kept practicing. She started applying it to daily life. When eating, she'd focus only on eating, the taste, the texture. When talking to Sophie, she'd put her phone away and actually listen. When walking the dog, she'd notice the trees, the sky, the feeling of movement instead of mentally rehearsing conversations. The changes were subtle at first. But over weeks, Elena noticed something shifting. She felt calmer, less anxious, more connected to her own life. More importantly, her relationship with Sophie improved. Sophie noticed. "It's like you're actually here now," she said one day. Elena realized how much she'd missed while living in her head. She'd been so busy worrying about Sophie's future that she'd missed her childhood. She couldn't get those years back, but she could change starting now. Sophie is 22 now. Elena recently told her, "I wasted so many years of your childhood worrying about things that either never happened or worked out fine. I missed so many moments because I was mentally rehearsing the future or replaying the past. I can't get those moments back. But I learned something. This moment, right now, is all we ever really have. I spent years not understanding that." Elena's story shows what many people learn too late. Life is happening now, not tomorrow, not in your memories, but in this exact moment. When you're fully present, you notice beauty you would have missed. You connect more deeply with people. You make better decisions. You experience more joy. Start small. Today, do one thing with complete attention. Eat one meal without distractions. Have one conversation where you truly listen. Take one walk where you notice your surroundings. Practice coming back to now. Because now is where your life is. Now is where happiness lives. Now is all you ever really have. Chapter 8. Take care of your body. Your mind and body are not separate. How you treat your body directly affects your mental and emotional state. You cannot neglect your physical health and expect to feel consistently happy. It doesn't work that way. Sleep, nutrition, movement, these aren't optional extras for happiness. They're fundamental requirements. When you're sleep deprived, everything feels harder. Your emotions are less stable. Your thinking is less clear. Small problems feel overwhelming. When you eat poorly, you feel sluggish, foggy, irritable. Your body doesn't have the nutrients it needs to produce the chemicals that regulate mood. When you don't move, tension builds. Energy stagnates. Stress hormones accumulate without release. But when you prioritize these basics, when you get adequate sleep, eat nutritious food, and move your body regularly, you create a biological foundation for happiness. This isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's about treating your body with the respect it deserves because it's the only one you have. Kevin's story. Kevin worked in tech and prided himself on how hard he pushed. He'd regularly work 12 to 14-hour days, fueled by coffee and energy drinks. He'd skip meals or grab fast food at his desk. He slept 4 to 5 hours a night, telling himself, "I'll sleep when I'm dead." Exercise? He didn't have time. For a few years, Kevin's body tolerated this. He was in his 20s, and youth compensated for a lot. But by 30, cracks were showing. He was constantly irritable. He'd snap at colleagues over minor things. His relationship with his girlfriend was suffering because he was always exhausted and moody. He had anxiety he'd never experienced before. His focus was deteriorating despite working longer hours. He went to a doctor for what he thought was a heart problem. He'd been having chest pains and panic attacks. After tests came back normal, the doctor said, "Your heart is fine. But your lifestyle is destroying you. You're not sleeping, you're not eating real food, and you're not moving. Your body is in constant stress mode. That's why you feel terrible." Kevin brushed it off initially. He was too busy to change his habits. But when his girlfriend threatened to leave because he'd become unbearable to be around, he realized something had to change. He started small. He set a rule: no work after 10 p.m. He aimed for 7 hours of sleep. He started meal prepping on Sundays so he'd have real food during the week. He began taking a 20-minute walk every morning before work. The first week was brutal. He felt guilty for wasting time on sleep and walks. His mind told him he should be working. But by week 2, something shifted. He noticed he was thinking more clearly. His mood stabilized. The anxiety lessened. He was actually getting more done in fewer hours because his brain was functioning properly. After a month, his girlfriend noticed. "You're like a different person. You're actually present. You smile again." After 3 months, Kevin's productivity at work had actually increased despite working fewer hours. His manager commented on how much sharper he seemed in meetings. Kevin reflected. "I thought taking care of my body was a luxury I couldn't afford. Turns out, not taking care of it was costing me everything: my health, my relationships, my actual work performance. I was so busy grinding that I didn't realize I was grinding myself into the ground." Now 35, Kevin still works hard, but he's learned that sustainable performance requires taking care of the machine. He sleeps 7 to 8 hours. He exercises 4 to 5 times a week. He eats real meals. And he's happier and more successful than he ever was during his burnout days. The irony is that everything I thought I'd lose by slowing down, career success, productivity, achievement, I actually gained by taking care of my body. I just had it backwards. Kevin's story illustrates what science confirms repeatedly: physical health and mental health are inseparable. Exercise increases serotonin and dopamine, neurotransmitters that regulate mood. Quality sleep allows your brain to process emotions and consolidate memories. Good nutrition provides the building blocks for brain chemicals that affect how you feel. You can't hate your body, neglect it, and expect to feel happy in your mind. They're connected. This doesn't mean you need to become an athlete. It means you need to move regularly: walk, stretch, dance, whatever feels good. It means you need to prioritize sleep, aiming for 7 to 9 hours consistently. It means you need to eat foods that nourish you, not just foods that temporarily satisfy cravings. When you take care of your body, you're creating the biological conditions for happiness. You're giving your brain the resources it needs to function well. You're reducing inflammation, balancing hormones, supporting healthy neurotransmitter production. This isn't vanity. This is foundational self-care. If you're struggling with happiness and you're not sleeping well, not moving regularly, not eating nutritiously, start there. Fix the foundation first. You'll be amazed at how much better you feel when you treat your body like it matters. Chapter 9. Create more than you consume. Modern life encourages constant consumption of food, entertainment, information, products. You scroll, watch, buy, eat, repeat. But consumption without creation leaves you feeling empty. Humans are made to create. To build. To make things. To contribute something new to the world, even if it's small. When you only consume, you become passive. You hand control to algorithms that feed you content. You let others define what you think about, what you value, what you spend time on. But when you create, when you write, build, make, design, cook, garden, craft anything, you become active. You engage differently with the world. You express something internal. You leave evidence that you were here. Creation doesn't have to be grand. You don't need to write a novel or build a business. You can cook a meal from scratch. You can tend a small garden. You can write in a journal. You can draw, even if no one sees it. You can build something with your hands. The act of creating engages your mind in a way that consumption never can. It requires focus, problem-solving, decision-making. It produces satisfaction that comes from making something that didn't exist before. When you shift from being primarily a consumer to being primarily a creator, you'll notice a change in how you feel. Purpose grows. Satisfaction deepens. Time feels more meaningful. Rachel's story. Rachel worked as an accountant and spent most of her free time consuming. She'd come home from work, scroll social media for an hour, watch Netflix for 3 hours, scroll some more before bed. Weekends were similar, browsing online, binge-watching shows, shopping online, eating out. She wasn't happy, but she couldn't quite identify why. She had a good job, a nice apartment, everything she needed. Yet she felt hollow. Like her life was passing by without her really participating in it. One day, her apartment's water heater broke and the landlord couldn't fix it for a week. Rachel had to go to her parents' house to shower. While there, she noticed her mom was quilting. "When did you start doing that?" Rachel asked. "I've been quilting for years," her mom said. "You've just never noticed." Rachel watched her mom work. "Don't you find it boring? Just sitting there stitching?" Her mom smiled. "It's the opposite of boring. When I'm quilting, I'm completely engaged. Time disappears. I'm creating something with my hands. It's one of the few things that makes me feel genuinely satisfied." Something about that conversation stuck with Rachel. That night, instead of watching TV, she tried something she hadn't done since childhood. She drew. Just simple sketches with a pencil. It felt awkward at first. She wasn't very good. But there was something different about it. She wasn't passively receiving content, she was actively creating something. She kept drawing. Every night, instead of scrolling or watching, she'd spend 30 minutes drawing. Sometimes just doodles. Sometimes attempts at real sketches. After a few weeks, she noticed she felt different. More energized. More present. More satisfied with her days. She expanded from there. She started cooking real meals instead of ordering delivery, not fancy recipes, just simple food made from scratch. She started a small herb garden on her balcony. She began writing morning pages, just stream of consciousness thoughts. 6 months later, Rachel's life looked similar on paper, same job, same apartment. But she felt completely different. "I didn't realize how empty consumption was making me feel," she said. "I was always taking in information, entertainment, food, but never putting anything out. I felt like a passive observer of my own life." Now, even though her creative pursuits were just hobbies, they gave her a sense of purpose that consumption never did. "When I spend 3 hours watching TV, I feel more tired than when I started. When I spend an hour drawing or cooking, I feel energized. I made something. I engaged my mind. I participated in my life instead of just letting it happen to me." Rachel's story shows a truth many people discover. Consumption is easy but ultimately unsatisfying. Creation is harder but deeply fulfilling. You were not designed to be a passive consumer. You were designed to make things, to build, to create. It doesn't matter if what you create is good by some objective standard. What matters is that you're engaging your creativity, expressing something internal, and contributing something to the world, even if that contribution is just a meal, a garden, a journal entry, a drawing no one else sees. Start small. Today, create one thing. Cook something. Write something. Build something. Draw something. Make something with your hands. Notice how different it feels from consuming. Notice the satisfaction that comes from making something that didn't exist before. When you shift from primarily consuming to regularly creating, you shift from feeling like life is happening to you to feeling like you're actively participating in it. That shift, from passive to active, from consumer to creator, is transformative. Chapter 10. Practice forgiveness, especially for yourself. Holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. It destroys you while the person you resent often doesn't even know or care. Forgiveness isn't about letting someone off the hook. It's about freeing yourself from the prison of bitterness. When you hold grudges, you keep yourself tied to the past. You replay painful moments. You nurture anger. You let someone who hurt you continue hurting you, even years later, because you won't let go. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. It doesn't mean what happened was okay. It doesn't require reconciliation. It doesn't mean you forget or put yourself in harm's way again. It simply means you refuse to let past pain control your present happiness. But here's what most people miss. The person you most need to forgive is yourself. You carry guilt, shame, regret for things you did or didn't do. You beat yourself up over mistakes, failures, choices you wish you could take back. That self-condemnation destroys happiness more effectively than almost anything else. You cannot be truly happy while hating yourself. You cannot build a good life while constantly punishing yourself for your past. Learning to forgive yourself, to accept that you did the best you could with what you knew at the time, is essential for lasting happiness. Daniel's story? Daniel was driving home from work 15 years ago when he got a call that his father had a heart attack. His dad was in the hospital, stable but serious. Daniel was tired. It was late. He told himself he'd go first thing in the morning. It was only a 40-minute drive, but he was exhausted. His dad was stable. It could wait. His father died that night. A second heart attack, sudden and fatal. Daniel never got to say goodbye. Never got to say the things he wanted to say. The last conversation they'd had was an argument 2 weeks earlier about something Daniel couldn't even remember anymore. The guilt consumed him. I should have gone. I should have dropped everything. I had one chance and I chose sleep over my father. For years, Daniel punished himself. He became withdrawn. He sabotaged relationships because he didn't feel he deserved happiness. He'd achieved success in his career, but every accomplishment felt hollow because his father wasn't there to see it. His wife finally confronted him after 8 years. You're torturing yourself over a decision you made when you were exhausted and had no idea what would happen. You're living like you don't deserve to be happy. But your dad wouldn't want this for you. Daniel knew she was right, but knowing didn't change how he felt. The guilt was a constant weight. His wife suggested therapy. Daniel resisted initially but eventually agreed. The therapist asked him, if your son made the same decision you made, came home tired, planned to visit the next morning, and something unexpected happened, would you want him to spend his entire life punishing himself? Of course not, Daniel said. Then why are you holding yourself to a standard you wouldn't hold anyone else to? That question cracked something open. Daniel realized he'd been carrying a level of judgment toward himself that he never applied to anyone else. The therapist helped him understand. You made a reasonable decision based on the information you had. You had no way of knowing what would happen. Punishing yourself doesn't honor your father. It destroys the life he gave you. Forgiving himself was the hardest thing Daniel ever did. It felt like letting himself off the hook, like minimizing what happened. But gradually, he began to separate the guilt from the grief. He could grieve his father's death without condemning himself as a terrible son. He could regret not going to the hospital without believing he deserved to suffer forever. He started writing letters to his father, things he wished he'd said. He created a small memorial in his home. He started living in a way that would make his father proud, rather than in a way that punished himself. The transformation took years, but Daniel eventually found peace. Not because he stopped caring about what happened, but because he stopped letting that one decision define his entire worth. I can't change what happened, Daniel says now. I'll always wish I'd gone to the hospital that night. But I've learned that destroying my life doesn't honor my father's memory. Living well does. Being a good father to my own kids does. Letting go of the guilt doesn't mean I didn't love him. It means I'm finally accepting that I'm human, and humans make imperfect decisions. Daniel's story shows the power and necessity of self-forgiveness. You've made mistakes. You've hurt people. You've made poor choices. You've failed. So has everyone else. Carrying guilt and shame doesn't fix anything. It doesn't undo the past. It doesn't help anyone. It just keeps you trapped. Forgiveness, both of others and yourself, is how you free yourself to actually be happy. This doesn't mean you ignore consequences or pretend you've never done wrong. It means you acknowledge what happened, learn from it, make amends where possible, and then release the constant self-punishment. You cannot build a happy future while dragging around a past you refuse to forgive. Let it go. Forgive the people who hurt you, not for them, but for you. Forgive yourself for the mistakes you've made. Learn the lessons, but release the shame. Because happiness is impossible when you're carrying the weight of unforgiveness. And freedom comes the moment you decide you're done carrying it. Conclusion: happiness is a practice, not a destination. If you've read this far, you now understand something most people never realize. Happiness isn't something you find, achieve, or arrive at. It's something you practice daily. These aren't one-time decisions. They're practices you return to again and again, especially when life gets hard. Some days will be easier than others. Some days you'll feel genuinely happy. Other days you'll struggle. That's normal. That's human. What matters is that you know how to find your way back. You know the practices that restore your peace, rebuild your joy, and reconnect you to what matters. The stories in this book aren't special people with superhuman abilities. They're regular people who learn these same principles, often through pain and struggle. Sarah learned to stop waiting for perfect conditions. Marcus discovered the power of gratitude. Jennifer found peace in letting go of control. David learned that happiness comes from contribution. Robert and Tom proved that deep relationships matter more than anything. Maria showed that accepting pain doesn't mean surrendering to it. Elena discovered that life happens in the present moment. Kevin learned that you can't neglect your body and expect to feel happy. Rachel found fulfillment in creating rather than just consuming. Daniel discovered that self-forgiveness is essential for peace. You can do the same. Start today. Choose one practice from this book and commit to it for the next week. Just one. Master it. Let it become part of who you are. Then add another. You have everything you need to be happy. Not someday. Not when things are perfect. Now. So stop waiting. Stop postponing your happiness until circumstances change. Start practicing. Start now. Start here. Your happiness is in your hands. It always has been. I've grown through difficulty. I've kept promises to myself. The practice of self-belief includes the moments of doubt. It includes the days when you don't feel strong but choose to act strong anyway. It includes the times when you have to consciously redirect your thoughts from what you fear to what you're working toward. This is why everything you've learned in these lessons matters, not just once, but repeatedly. You'll need to stop seeking validation again and again. You'll need to push back against your mind's doubts regularly. You'll need to keep going when no one's watching, not once, but many times. These aren't one-time actions. They're practices that become part of who you are. And that's actually good news. Because it means you're never stuck. It means even if you've lost your way, you can find it again. Even if doubt has gotten loud, you can quiet it through action. Even if you've broken promises to yourself, you can start keeping them again today. Self-belief is forged through repetition. Through showing up consistently. Through choosing yourself over and over. Through proving to yourself, again and again, that you're worth the effort. Some days it will feel easy. Other days it will feel impossible. Neither of those feelings defines your worth or your capacity. What defines them is your commitment to the practice. So understand this, you're not trying to reach a point where you never doubt yourself again. You're building the strength to move forward even when doubt is present. You're not trying to become someone who never feels fear. You're becoming someone who acts despite the fear. You're not trying to achieve permanent, unshakable confidence. You're developing the ability to rebuild your belief whenever it's tested. And it will be tested. Life will challenge you. Failure will visit you. Criticism will find you. Setbacks will occur. But if you understand that self-belief is a practice, you'll know what to do. You return to the fundamentals. You stop seeking external validation. You push back against negative thoughts. You keep going when no one's watching. You look yourself in the eye and say you're ready. You protect your mind. You celebrate progress. You remove quitting as an option. You practice. And through that practice, you become someone who doesn't just hope they're capable, someone who knows it, because they've proven it to themselves time and time again. Conclusion. Believing in yourself isn't about arrogance or delusion. It's not about thinking you're perfect or never experiencing doubt. It's about choosing to trust yourself enough to try. It's about moving forward even when you're uncertain. It's about keeping promises to yourself, protecting your mind, and refusing to quit on your potential. Everything in your life changes when you decide that you matter. When you decide that your goals are worth pursuing. When you decide that your growth is worth protecting. When you decide that you're done waiting for permission. You don't need anyone's validation to begin. You don't need perfect conditions to make progress. You don't need to feel completely ready to take the next step. You just need to choose yourself. Today. Tomorrow. And every day after that. That's how you build unshakable self-belief, not through one big moment, but through 1,000 small choices that say, I'm worth it. I'm capable. I'm not giving up on me. So start now. Not tomorrow. Not when things are easier. Now. Look yourself in the eye and make the decision, I believe in me. Not because it's easy. Not because everyone agrees. But because you've decided it's true. And then prove it. One day, one choice, one action at a time.